Hey everybody, this is the foreword to Stalin, A Critical Survey of Bolshevism by Boris Souvarine. I'm going to read the foreword and I'm going to read the table of contents. So chapter 1 is titled So-So, S-O-S-S-O, and its contents include birth of Stalin, his family, his native country, childhood and youth, the Caucasus and Georgia, the social environment, bandits and gentry, economic and social conditions, the Tiflis Seminary, the Transcaucasian Railway, the first Social Democrats of Georgia, Stalin joins the socialist movement. Chapter 2 is titled The Years of Apprenticeship, Socialism in Russia, Workers and Peasants, Industry under Tsarism, Backward Capitalism and an Impotent Bourgeoisie, the Intelligentsia, the Pioneers of the Revolution, Theoreticians and Policies, Herzen, Bakunin, Nechayev, Tkachev, Populism and Terrorism, Enter the Proletariat, Marxism, Plekhanov, Workers and Socialist Circles, First Congress of the Social Democratic Party, Stalin at Tiflis, Autobiography and Perspective, Lenin, Iskra, Origins of Bolshevism, The Professional Revolutionaries, Stalin as Militant, Arrest First Exile, Trotsky, The Fundamental Ideas of Lenin. Chapter 3 is titled Prologue to Revolution, and the headings include Stalin and Lenin, Second Congress of the Social Democracy, the quote hards, end quote, and the quote softs, end quote. Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, the split, Lenin the Jacobin, Stalin the Bolshevik, internal struggles in the party, Lenin's isolation, discussions and polemic, Rosa Luxemburg, Plekhanov's prophecy, the first Leninists, the Russo-Japanese War, the Social Revolutionary Party, strikes in the working class movement, Bloody Sunday at St. Petersburg, the Revolution of 1905, the Third Social Democratic Congress held by the Bolsheviks, the Soviet of Workers' Deputies, disagreements between socialists, Lenin as seen by Stalin. Chapter 4, A Professional Revolutionary, the subheadings being After the First Revolution, Social Democratic Unity, the Stockholm Congress, New dissensions between Bolsheviks and Mensheviks, the Duma, Lenin and the boycott of the elections, the Boyeviki, expropriations and banditry, guerrilla warfare, the Bolshevik Center, Krasin, the Tiflis affair, Kamo, Stalin and Bolshevik terrorism, Tysins Alja, Pilsudski, the London Congress, Stalin at Baku, Stalin in prison, Stalin at St. Petersburg, definitive split in the social democracy, Bolshevism and Menshevism, dislike of the revolution, tendencies, fractions, and groups, the question of money, Bogdanov, the Bolshevik Party, Stalin member of the Central Committee, Lenin and Trotsky, the national question, Stalin in Austria, Malinovsky, Stalin deported to Siberia, police and provocateurs. Chapter 5, The Revolution, the War of 1914, Defensism and Defeatism, Lenin against all, the February Revolution, Provisional Government and Petrograd Soviet, Stalin at Liberty, Bolshevik Confusion, the Return of Lenin, the April Theses, quote, All power to the Soviets, Trotsky with Lenin, Hopes of the World Revolution, the July Days, the Question of the Soviets, the Kornilov episode, the Six-Party Congress, Stalin's role, the Great Bolshevik Wave, Trotsky, President of the Petrograd Soviet, Lenin, Advocate of Complete Democracy, State and Revolution, Divergences of View on the Date of the Insurrection, Lenin demands the coup d'etat, Trotsky directs the military operations, the October Revolution, Achievements and Prospects. Chapter 6, The Civil War, The Morrow of Victory, Discussions between the Bolsheviks, Lenin at Work, The Liberty of the Press, Gorky against Lenin, the Council of People's Commissars, Stalin, Commissar for Nationalities, The Rights of Nations, Theoretical and Practical, Evolution of Lenin, Rosa Luxemburg's Warnings, Georgia, Insoluble Contradictions, The Agrarian Question, Rosa Luxemburg's Advice, Lenin's Waverings, The Dictatorship of the Proletariat, War and Peace, Brest-Litovsk. Disagreements among the Bolsheviks, Lenin and peace at any price, Trotsky's attitude, the fraction of the left, acute crisis in the party, the Seventh Congress, the Communist Party, Trotsky War Commissar, the Cheka, Stalin at the front, the Red Army, treasons, risings, and rebellions, the military opposition, Tsaritsyn, terror, Stalin against Trotsky, armistice and revolutions, the Civil War of Russian versus Russian, Stalin as military chief, the Communist International, the Eighth Party Congress, Stalin Commissar of Inspection, Lenin's colleagues. Chapter 7, The Soviet Republic. The headings being The Evolution of Bolshevism, Lenin and the Dictatorship, the Ruling Oligarchy, the Death Penalty, Militarization of the Regime, the Labor Armies, Sterling of the Soviets, Lenin's Contradictions, the Politburo of the Party, the Secretariat of the Central Committee, the Ninth Party Congress, the Democratic Opposition, Discussion on the Trade Unions, Lenin versus Trotsky, the Workers' Opposition, the Tenth Party Congress, Kronstadt, the New Economic Policy, Thermidor, Stalin Secretary of the Party, Soviet Reality, the Machine, Personal Antagonisms, the 11th Party Congress, Lenin's Praise of Stalin, Lenin's Illness, Stalin in Action, the Bureaucracy, Lenin's Projects for Reform, the National Policy, Stalin and Georgia, Lenin against Stalin, Lenin's Last Advice, the Testament, the Question of the Economic Plan, Split between Lenin and Stalin, the Republican Soviet State. Chapter 8, The Heritage. Subheadings, The Troika. I guess they're headings. Headings, The Troika, Trotsky and Expectation, the Union of Soviet Republics, the 12th Party Congress, the Economic Crisis and the, quote, scissors, end quote, Trotsky and the Peasants, Tendencies and Groupings in the Party, the Clandestine Fractions, the Dictatorship of the Triumvirate, Strikes and Workers' Demonstrations, Trotsky against the Troika, the 46, Stalin and the German Revolution. I don't know whether there's an exclamation point, but I don't know why. The Triumvirate and Democracy, the New Course, Stalin against Trotsky, Defeat of the Oppositions, Trotsky's Responsibility, Lenin's Death, Leninism, the State Religion of Bolshevism, and Leninism, the 13th Party Congress, the Bolshevization of the Communist International, the Persecution of the Trotskyists, Stalin as Prophet, the Georgian Insurrection, Stalin's Declaration, Cheka and GPU, Suicides, New Conflict in the Party, Defeat of Trotsky, Split in the Triumvirate, the Leningrad Opposition, the Dictatorship of the Secretariat, Face to the Country, quote, Enrich yourselves, end quote, the Left and the Right, Stalin as Theoretician, Socialism in a Single Country, the 14th Party Congress, Stalin in Statistics, Defeat of the New Oppositionists, Stalin, Irremovable Secretary. Chapter 9, The Inheritor, Stalin seen by Trotsky, Variations on Thermidor, Trotsky's Optimism, the Opposition Bloc, Conditions of the Working Class, the Vagabond Children, Stalin's Foresight, the Industrialists, the Plan, Settlement of Accounts between Leninists, the, quote, English Question, end quote, Stalin at the helm, Discords, Disputes, and Quarrels, Stalin totally opposed to industrialization, the Chinese Question, Stalin's mortification, communist disaster in China, the imminent war, dislocation of the opposition bloc, Trotsky's contradictions, the 10th anniversary of October, the 5-year plan, Trotsky excluded from the party, the opposition outlawed, the 15th Party Congress, Stalin the industrialist, the quote capitulators, end quote, the Canton Commune, deportation of the opposition, Trotsky in Siberia, contradictions and responsibilities of the opposition, the Shakti trial, Stalin and the collectivization of agriculture, the right against Stalin, new internal struggles, Bukharin's revelations, the right danger, Trotsky in exile, Stalin and the plan, dekulakization, defeat of the right, Stalin's regime, the Knauto Soviet state. And I just learned from reading a chapter from Ante Siliga's The Russian Enigma that Knaut, or Naut, Knout, means whip. So the Knauto Soviet state, which I guess means like the whipping Soviet state, the quote, year of the great turn, end quote, end of the NEP, Stalin's 50th birthday. Chapter 10, Stalin. Stalin's plan, promises and conditions, public education, bureaucratic machine, Stalin's dictatorship, the 16th Party Congress, rural collectivization, quote, dizzy with success, end quote, industrialization, draconian measures, decrees and circulars, the interior passport, food shortage, suppression, arrests, deportations, Ryazanov, Stalin's silence, the famine, the balance sheet of the 5-year plan, appearances and realities, the plan, results and consequences, historic precedents, the memory of Peter the Great, parallels and comparisons, the lessons of Russian history, Soviet society, socialism or state capitalism, the new privileges, possibilities of war, neo-patriotism and neo-defeatism, socialism and communism reversed, political and social inequality, letters and the arts under Stalin, suicides, the 17th Party Congress, Stalin supreme, the greatest chief of all times and all peoples, the second 5-year plan, evolution of Stalin, the USSR and the League of Nations, Stalin pacifist, the Soviet youth, international discredit of communism, what is Stalin, suicide of Ali Ulieva. Is that his wife? Svetlana Iosifovna Aliluyeva, born Stalina. Oh, that's not who I'm looking for. That's his daughter. Nadezhda Aliluyeva lived from 1901 to 1932, was the second wife of Joseph Stalin. Aliluyeva was born in Baku to a friend of Stalin, a fellow revolutionary, and was raised in St. Petersburg. Having known Stalin from a young age, she married him when she was 18, and they had 2 children. Aliluyeva worked as a secretary for Bolshevik leaders, including Vladimir Lenin and Stalin, before enrolling at the Industrial Academy in Moscow to study synthetic fibers and become an engineer. Aliluyeva had health issues which had an adverse impact on her relationship with Stalin. Aliluyeva suspected Stalin was unfaithful, which led to frequent arguments with Stalin. On several occasions, Aliluyeva reportedly contemplated leaving Stalin. After an argument, she fatally shot herself early in the morning of the 7th of November, 1932. Back to the text. The assassination of Kirov. The reply of terrorism. to terror. Stalin's courage, Lenin's last words. Postscript, the counter-revolution. The headings. Historic dates, the Kirov murder, diversion and repression, Stalin's constitution, deportations and purges, transferences and disappearances, Nicholas Yazov, the end of the old guard, suppressions and liquidations, the Great Retreat, economic measures, morals and customs, Stakhanovism, quote, the offensive on the cultural front, end quote, quote, the happy life, end quote, discovery of patriotism, Stalin and Hitler, hierarchy and honors, public education, the revision of history, the tradition, Stalin's volte-face, the end of the Soviets, unanimity, suicides and suspicious deaths, the trial of the 16, the trial of the 17, the fall of Yagoda, mass arrests and executions, decapitation of the Red Army, the Year of Terror, numerous suicides, the trial of the 21, Mussolini and Stalin, the Great Mass Murder, a communist St. Bartholomew, trial by statistics, the quote democratic end quote elections, a new 16th century, Ivan the Terrible, the meaning of the trials, quote men of note, political importance end quote, communist youth, riddles of history, military plot question mark, Stalin's motives, apologies and dithyrambics, failure of the totalitarian economy, the 1937 census, balance sheet of disaster, foreign policy, Stalin's regime. So that is the end of the table of contents. Now we can finally get to the foreword. Okay, so foreword. Zhugashvili, J.V., peasant of the province and district of Tiflis.
Tiflis.
Okay, so Tiflis is Tbilisi. Didn't know that. So, Tiflis or Tbilisi. Tbilisi. Okay. Tbilisi, in some languages still known by its pre-1936 name, Tiflis. Tiflis. Is the capital and largest city of Georgia, lying on the banks of the Kura River, around 1.2 million with around 1.2 million inhabitants, which is about a third of Georgia's population. Tbilisi was founded in the 5th century AD by Vakhtang I of Iberia, and since then has served as the capital of various Georgian kingdoms and republics between 1801 and 1917, then part of the Russian Empire. Tbilisi was the seat of the Caucasus Viceroyalty, governing both the northern and southern parts of the Caucasus. Because of Tbilisi's location at the crossroads between Europe and Asia, and Tbilisi's proximity to the lucrative Silk Road throughout history, Tbilisi has been a point of contention among various global powers. To this day, the city's location ensures its position as an important transit route for energy and trade projects. Tbilisi's history is reflected in Tbilisi's architecture, which is a mix of medieval, neoclassical, Beaux Arts, Art Nouveau, Stalinist, and modern structures. Historically, Tbilisi has been home to people of multiple cultural, ethnic, and religious backgrounds, though its population is overwhelmingly Eastern Orthodox Christian. Notable tourist destinations include cathedrals Sameba and Sioni, Freedom Square, Rustaveli Avenue, Agmashenebli Avenue, medieval Nadi Kala Fortress, the Pseudo-Moorish Opera Theater, and the Georgian National Museum. The climate of Tbilisi mostly ranges from between 20 to 30 degrees Celsius or 68 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit in summer, and -1 to 7 degrees Celsius or 30 to 45 degrees in winter. Back to the text. Zhugashvili, J.V., peasant of the province and district of Tiflis, from the village of Didilolo, Orthodox clerk, by decision of the Ministry of the Interior, exiled under surveillance for 2 years, dating from the 29th of September 1908 to Chagodsk, province of Vologda. Sovietchegodsk is a town in Kotlasky district of Archangelsk Oblast, Russia, located on the right-hand bank of the Vychegda River, about 25 kilometers 16 miles northeast of Kotlas, the administrative center of the district. Population 2,460. 2010 census, 2,843, 2002 census, and 4,004, 1989 Soviet census. And Wikipedia says Vologda is a city and the administrative center of Vologda Oblast, Russia, located on the river of Vologda within the watershed of the northern Dvina. Population 313,944. 2021 census. 301,755 2010 census. 293,446 2002 census, and 282,802 1989 Soviet census. Vologda serves as a major transport hub of the northwest of Russia. The Ministry of Culture of the Russian Federation has classified Vologda as a historic city, one of 41 in Russia, and one of only 3 in Vologda Oblast. The Russian Cultinfo website wrote that there were 224 monuments of historical, artistic, and cultural importance in Vologda. So let me repeat that last sentence because I don't know if I finished it or not. By decision of the Ministry of the Interior, exiled under surveillance for 2 years, dating from the 29th of September 1908 to Soviet-Chagodsk province of Vologda, whence he escaped. Exiled again to the province of Vologda, he again escaped on the 29th of February 1912. By decision of the Ministry of the Interior, exiled under surveillance for 3 years dating from June 8, 1912 to Narim district, whence he again escaped on November 1st, 1912. Narim district is a village in Parabelsky district of Tomsk Oblast, Russia, located on the banks of the Ob River near its confluence with the Ket River, 25 kilometers, 16 miles from the village of Parabel. The village is surrounded on all sides by marshes. And it's like deep in the interior of Russia. These few lines contained, at the beginning of the Russian Revolution, all that was known of an obscure Bolshevik answering to the surname Stalin. It was found in the archives of the Moscow Police Department and published in 1918 at Moscow. General A.I. Spiridovich, one of the heads of the Okhrana, secret political police of the old regime, reproduced it almost verbatim in his History of Bolshevism in Russia. Wikipedia says Alexander Ivanovich Spiridovich lived from 1873 to 1952 and was a police general in the Russian Imperial Guard. Spiridovich became a historian after he had left Russia. Back to the text. But no one at that time paid any attention to it. Stalin's name was still lost in a semi-anonymity, unknown not only to the people of Russia but even in the ranks of the Bolshevik Party, and obviously still more so abroad. This police chit-chat may be supplemented by a note of the local gendarmerie relating to the year 1903 and published by close associates of Stalin in Zarya Vostoka of Tiflis, official organ of Bolshevism in Georgia. Quote, according to information recently received from our agents, Zhugashvili was known in the organization under the nicknames of, quote, Soso and of, quote, Koba. He has been working in the Social Democratic Party since 1902, Menshevik first and then Bolshevik, as propagandist and director in the first section, Railways, end quote. The first biographical notice of Stalin by the Communist Party, less obscure but as brief as that of the Okhrana, is to be found in the explanatory or documentary notes added to the complete works of Lenin. Quote, J. Stalin, born in 1879, member of the party since 1898, one of the most notable organizers and leaders of the Bolsheviks, frequently imprisoned, 6 times deported, member of the Central Committee uninterruptedly since 1912, editor of Pravda in 1917, after the October Revolution, People's Commissar for Nationalities in 1921 to 23, People's Commissar for Workers and Peasants Inspection, member of the All-Russian Central Executive Committee, Secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, end quote. During Lenin's lifetime, it appears that comparatively little attention was paid to the future master of Russia, although Stalin was already secretary of the Bolshevik Party. Stalin's name did not figure in any authoritative history of socialism, of the workers' movement, or of the Russian Revolution. In the first 10 volumes of Lenin's works treating of the events, the ideas, and the men of a whole epoch, Stalin is never mentioned once, very rarely in the other 10, and then only as a lay figure. There is no word of Stalin in the innumerable memoirs and recollections published in the course of 10 years. In The Great Upheaval, a work in which Lunacharsky sketches a series of revolutionary silhouettes, afterwards collected under this name in a small volume, Stalin is not taken into consideration. According to Google Books, revolutionary silhouettes says, this is from the front flap of the book. It says, a prominent revolutionary, literary critic, and Soviet commissar for education, Lunacharsky wrote his, quote, silhouettes immediately after the October Revolution, at a time when, in his own words, quote, we were still living in its very crucible, end quote. First published in 1919, Revolutionary Silhouettes was suppressed by Stalin and has never since appeared in Russia in its complete form. The reasons for this long obscurity are not hard to find. Lunacharsky admitted to include a profile of Stalin, and Lunacharsky wrote at a time when it was still possible to describe objectively figures like Lenin, who have since been deified in Soviet history, and to make admiring references to others, like Trotsky, whose names have been expunged from it. The, quote, silhouettes are sketches based entirely on personal recollection of personalities from the revolutionary period whom Lunacharsky knew, worked, conspired, and fought with, brilliant, vital figures like Lenin and Trotsky, intellectuals like Plekhanov, tireless party workers and hardened revolutionaries like Zinoviev, Sverdlov, and Volodarsky, and the Menshevik leader Martov, whom Lenin remembered with affection on his deathbed. Apart from his historical importance, these memoirs show complex human beings at a moment in time before Soviet history made them its unassailable heroes and martyrs, its non-persons, or merely its footnotes. So that's Revolutionary Silhouettes by Lunacharsky. Back to the text. There is not a trace of Stalin in the publications of the party and hardly any in the local press. Stalin's early career resembles that of 100 of other revolutionaries of different schools, arrests, deportations, and escapes under the old regime, high political and administrative functions under the new. At first sight, it is duller than many others, devoid of any memorable episode, of any notable event in the revolutionary calendar. It offers no contribution to the body of socialist thought. In another volume of Lenin's works, there are some supplementary labels in the appendices of no particular interest to the outsider. Quote, Stalin, J.V. Zhugashvili, revolutionary name Koba, of peasant origin in the province of Tiflis, frequently arrested and deported, participated in a number of congresses and conferences, one of the most notable organizers and leaders of the Bolshevik Party, co-opted at the beginning of 1912 to the Central Committee of the Russian Workers' Social Democratic Party. After the General Conference at Prague, Stalin entered the Russian Bureau of the Central Committee and was active illegally in Russia, where he was soon arrested and then deported to Turugansk. Returned from exile after the February Revolution, close collaborator of Lenin at the time of the preparation and achievement of the October Revolution, member of the Central Committee uninterruptedly from 1912 onwards, and of the Council of People's Commissars since 1917, end quote. I don't know if that was Lenin or part of just it says supplementary details in the appendices. Wikipedia says Turukhansk, Turukhansk, is a rural locality and the administrative center of Turukhansky district of Krasnoyarsk Krai, Russia, located 1,474 kilometers north of Krasnoyarsk at the confluence of the Yenisei and Nizhnyaya Tunguska rivers. Until 1924, the town was known as Monastirskoye. From 1924 to 1930 as Novoturukhansk. It is not to be confused with Staroturukhansk. Known as Turukhansk until 1920. All right, back to the text. Identical notes are to be found in other volumes of Lenin's works and in the works of Grigory Zinoviev. Stalin's peasant origin is noted in each case. The article Zhugashvili in the unfinished work of V. Nevsky, material for a biographical dictionary of social democrats, is more complete in detail but contains inaccuracies. After Lenin's death, a new revised and augmented edition of the complete works was undertaken, but the official historians, in spite of their zeal for the new master, could give him little more, after 10 years of revolution, than a dozen lines. In Volume 20, some of the variants may be quoted. Quote, militant social democrat from 1896 onwards, organized in 1902 at Baku, various workers' demonstrations, was exiled to eastern Siberia, escaped in 1904, and began illegal activity, exiled in 1912 to the Nerem district, exiled in 1913, after another escape and return to St. Petersburg, to Turukhansk, end quote. But in the next volume, published in 1928, the tone changes. The account of Stalin's life is modified and becomes more detailed. It is still documentary in form, but the propagandist element is apparent. Bolshevism was then engaged in merciless intestine struggles. It says intestine in the text. And the personal record of every important figure became a weapon in the struggle. Each of them searched the past of his adversary in the hope of discovering some instance of weakness, some error or mistake, and each accentuates his own title to the confidence of the ruling party and the new dominant class. This time Stalin dictated the notice himself. Quote, Stalin, J.V., Zhugashvili, born in 1879, son of a boot operative in Tiflis, militant from 1897 onwards, one of the original Bolsheviks, imprisoned in 1901 for having directed strikes at Baku, deported to eastern Siberia, escaped and returned to the Caucasus to take part in the party's illegal activities, was present in 1905 at the Temer Forest Congress, delegate to the Stockholm and London conferences of the Russian Social Democrats, In 1907, made the Baku organization the stronghold of Bolshevism in the Caucasus. Arrested and deported in 1908. In 1910, militant in illegal activity. At Petersburg, again arrested, elected to the Central Committee in 1912, took part in editing the legal party organs in 1912 to 13, deported in 1913 to Turkhansk, where he remained until the time of the revolution. Member of the political bureau of the party from May 1917, director of the central organ of the party when Lenin was outlawed after the events of July 1917, with his severe law managed the 6th Congress of the party, was a member of the committees of 5 and of 7 which organized the October insurrection, People's Commissar for Nationalities, then for War Inspection, served in the Red Army in the Civil War, this defense of Tsaritsyn on the Polish front in the Wrangel campaign, etc. From 1920 to 1923, member of the Revolutionary War Council, General Secretary of the party since 1922, member of the Executive Committee of the Communist International from 1925 onwards, author of a series of works on Leninism and the question of nationalities. End quote. Stalin on himself. Thus, the Didio Lolo peasant has become a boot operative of Tiflis, and his son Soso, as he was familiarly called in Georgia, later Koba, and finally Stalin, made known his merits as writer, politician, soldier, statesman, and even as thinker and theorist. This account was to serve as a basis for the article compiled by his secretary for the Dictionary and Encyclopedia Granat, and reproduced ad nauseum in Russian brochures and periodicals. But this is nothing compared with the remarkable demonstration of December 21st, 1929, Stalin's 50th birthday. The whole Soviet press displayed vast headlines, large portraits and articles of enormous length. The eulogies of the dictator were not less pretentious. According to the incense burners of his entourage, all human and some superhuman virtues were incarnate in Stalin. Stalin's modesty, courage, and devotion were paralleled with his knowledge and wisdom. He was the organizer of the Bolshevik Party, the leader of the October Revolution, the head of the Red Army, the victor in the Civil War as well as in foreign war. He was moreover the leader of the world proletariat. The man of action proved himself as great as the theorist, and both are infallible. There is no instance of a mistake made by Stalin. One leitmotif recurs constantly in the dithyrambs: man of iron, steeled soldier, allusions to the name he had adopted, with variations on the invariable theme of steel and iron, quote, iron Leninist, end quote, quote, granite Bolshevik, end quote. The same formula, the same exaggeration, the same extravagant expressions of admiration and submissiveness, in strict conformity with models sent down from Moscow, recur in thousands of addresses, messages, and telegrams from all parts of Russia, which fill whole pages of the newspapers, and then several columns daily for weeks. Where am I? The state publishing house has issued thousands of copies of collections of these tributes in which panegyrics filled over 250 pages, in addition to innumerable messages simply indicated by the name of the senders. The names of the senders. An official portrait bust was manufactured by mass production and distributed officially. The name of Stalin, already given to several towns, was again given to factories, electricity stations, rural undertakings, barracks, and schools. Under the title of, quote, Stalin the Enigma, end quote, a contributor to Pravda, the Bolshevik official organ in Moscow, set out on December 21st, 1929, the terms used outside Russia to describe the man of the day. Quote, Stalin, the mysterious host of the Kremlin, end quote. Quote, Stalin, dictator of a sixth of the world, end quote. Quote, Stalin, victory over all opposition, end quote. Quote, Stalin, impenetrable personality, end quote. Quote, Stalin, the communist sphinx, end quote. Quote, Stalin, the enigma, end quote. Quote, insoluble mystery, end quote. Quote, indecipherable enigma, end quote, were the most frequent used tags, no doubt because Stalin emerged quietly from an obscure past and apparently banal present, and because none but a few of the initiated could explain his access to unlimited power. One of Stalin's oldest comrades, of Caucasian origin and resembling him also in his rise to power, Sergei Ordzhonikidze, wrote naively on the same anniversary, quote, the whole world is writing today about Stalin, end quote, as if the orders of the Bolshevik dictatorship had the force of law for the press of all countries, as if the circulars of the secretariat of his party were propagated and could be imposed upon the Soviet frontiers like waves of light. He adds, this time with more justification, quote, much will also be written in the future, end quote, and further, quote, his enemies will write with hatred and his friends with love, end quote, forgetting that it may be possible to write, quote, without hate and without fear, end quote, conscientiously and with some degree of critical spirit, an attempt at impartial investigation and historical truth. 10 years earlier, on the 23rd of April 1920, Moscow celebrated the Jubilee of Lenin, the real initiator of Bolshevism, the actual founder of the Communist Party, the authentic victor of October, the true creator of the Soviet state. It was practically an intimate gathering of the Moscow Committee of the party. Old friends exchanged their recollections. The record is a modest pamphlet of 30 pages. Between 1920 and 1930, a profound change had come over the Russian Revolution. The Bolshevism of today is no longer what it was. It is this which lends a special interest to the personality of Stalin, wielder of a dictatorial power unparalleled in the world of today and unprecedented in history.